Imagine being the advisor to the most powerful man in the world, and that man is slowly going insane. Your every word could mean life or death, not just for you, but for millions of people across an empire. One wrong move, and you're executed. One moment of weakness, and everything you've built crumbles. This was Seneca's reality for over a decade as advisor to Emperor Nero. But here's what's shocking. Seneca didn't just survive this impossible situation, he thrived in it. While serving under one of history's most volatile leaders, he developed a powerful crisis management system that is still used by Fortune 500 CEOs, military strategists, and world leaders today. I will show you Seneca's exact framework for navigating any crisis, no matter how impossible it seems. Lucius Annaeus Seneca wasn't born into power. He was a philosopher, playwright, and businessman who found himself in the most dangerous job in the Roman Empire, advisor to the emperor. When Nero came to power at age 16 in 54 AD, Seneca became his chief counselor, essentially running the Roman Empire while trying to guide a young man who would become one of history's most notorious tyrants. For the first 5 years, this arrangement worked brilliantly. Seneca helped create what historians call the Golden Age of Nero, a period of prosperity, cultural flourishing, and relative peace across the empire. But then everything began to unravel. Nero started showing his true nature. He murdered his mother, Agrippina. He killed his wife, Octavia. He began performing on stage, something considered deeply shameful for an emperor. He started massive building projects that bankrupted the treasury. Through it all, Seneca had to navigate an impossible balance, maintaining his influence to protect the empire while avoiding becoming the next victim of Nero's paranoia. This wasn't just political maneuvering, survival at the highest stakes. Seneca was walking a tightrope over an abyss, knowing that one misstep would mean not just his death, but potentially the collapse of the entire Roman system of government. What makes Seneca's story extraordinary is that he didn't just react to these crises. He developed a systematic approach to crisis management that drew from his deep study of Stoic philosophy. He understood that you need more than luck or political skill in times of extreme uncertainty and danger. You need a framework that helps you make clear decisions when everything around you is chaos. The 3 pillars of Seneca's crisis management. Pillar 1. Radical acceptance of what you cannot control. Seneca's first principle was the discipline of desire, learning to want only what is within your power to achieve. In a crisis, most people waste enormous amounts of energy fighting against circumstances they cannot change. Seneca realized this was not just ineffective, it was actively destructive. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. When Nero began his descent into madness, Seneca could have spent his energy trying to change the emperor's fundamental character. Instead, he accepted that Nero's personality was beyond his control and focused on what he could influence. The specific decisions Nero made, the advisors who had access to him, and the information that reached the emperor's ears. The control audit. In any crisis, Seneca's first step was what we can call the control audit. He would mentally divide every aspect of the situation into 3 categories. Completely within my control. My actions, my responses, my decisions, my attitude. Partially within my influence. Other people's decisions, through persuasion, timing of actions, information flow. Completely outside my control. Other people's fundamental character, external events, past decisions, natural disasters. The key insight is that most people in crisis spend 80% of their mental energy on Category 3, things completely outside their control, while neglecting Categories 1 and 2, where they have power. For example, when Nero decided to perform publicly as an actor and singer, Seneca couldn't stop this impulse. However, he could influence how these performances were staged, who attended them, and how they were presented to the public to minimize political damage. Pillar 2. Strategic patience and timing. Seneca's second pillar was understanding that in a crisis, timing is everything. He developed what he called the discipline of action, knowing what to do and when to do it. Nothing, to my way of thinking, is a better proof of a well-ordered mind than a man's ability to stop just where he is and pass some time in his own company. This wasn't about being passive or indecisive. Seneca understood that in volatile situations, premature action can be more dangerous than no action at all. He learned to distinguish between urgent and essential, between reacting and responding. The timing matrix. Seneca developed a framework for crisis decision-making based on two key factors: immediate versus delayed action. Some crises require an instant response to prevent catastrophic damage. Others are better served by a strategic delay in gathering information and letting emotions cool. Reversible versus irreversible decisions. Reversible decisions can be made quickly with less information. Irreversible decisions require maximum deliberation and preparation. For instance, when Nero wanted to divorce and execute his wife Octavia to marry his mistress Poppaea, Seneca couldn't prevent this desire, but he could influence the timing and method. He delayed the decision for months, arranged for a less politically damaging divorce process, and helped manage the public relations aftermath. Pillar 3. Principled flexibility. Seneca's third pillar was the most sophisticated, maintaining core principles while adapting tactics to circumstances. He called this the discipline of assent, the ability to hold firm to your fundamental values while being flexible about how you express them. The willing, destiny guides them. The unwilling, destiny drags them. This principle prevented Seneca from becoming either a rigid idealist who couldn't function in the real world, or a complete opportunist who abandoned all principles for survival. The principle-tactic distinction. Seneca distinguished between non-negotiable principles, core values that define who you are; justice, protecting the innocent when possible; wisdom, making decisions based on reason, not emotion; courage, facing brutal truths and necessary actions; self-discipline, maintaining personal integrity under pressure; flexible tactics, methods for expressing those principles. Sometimes justice meant confrontation. Sometimes it meant a strategic retreat to fight another day. Sometimes wisdom meant speaking truth to power. Sometimes it meant remaining silent to preserve influence for more essential battles. For example, Seneca's principle protected the Roman people from Nero's worst impulses. Sometimes this meant directly arguing against harmful policies. Other times, it meant subtly redirecting Nero's attention toward less destructive pursuits. The principle remained constant. The tactics adapted to the circumstances. The decision-making framework in action. The Great Fire Crisis. A case study. In 64 AD, Rome burned for 6 days and 7 nights. 2/3 of the city was destroyed. Nero was accused of starting the fire and playing his lyre while Rome burned. This was the ultimate crisis that kills governments and ends careers. Let me show you how Seneca applied his framework to navigate this catastrophe. Step 1. Rapid assessment using the control audit. Cannot control. The fire had already happened. Public anger and rumors were spreading. Political enemies were using the crisis to attack Nero. Can influence Nero's response to the crisis, the narrative about what happened, the rebuilding process and policies. Can control his advice and actions, his response to the crisis, his decision about whether to remain in his position. Step 2. Strategic timing analysis. Seneca recognized this was a moment requiring immediate action on some fronts and strategic patience on others. Immediate action required. Disaster relief and rebuilding efforts. Public communication to address rumors. Demonstrating imperial concern for victims. Strategic patience required. Significant policy changes. Wait for emotions to cool. Personnel changes. Avoid looking like scapegoating. Long-term urban planning needed careful deliberation. Step 3. Principled flexibility in response. Seneca's principles demanded that he help the Roman people recover from this disaster. However, his tactics had to adapt to the political reality of working with an increasingly unstable emperor. Principle: serve the greater good of Rome. Flexible tactics. He couldn't directly contradict Nero's version of events, but he could focus attention on relief efforts rather than blame. He couldn't prevent Nero's grandiose rebuilding plans, but could influence them toward more practical and beneficial projects. He couldn't stop rumors about Nero's involvement, but he could ensure the government's response was competent and compassionate. The framework applied: modern crisis navigation. Here's how to apply Seneca's framework to any modern crisis. Phase 1, the 24-hour assessment, immediate response. Emergency triage. What requires immediate action to prevent further damage? Control audit. What can I control, influence, or must I accept? Stakeholder map. Who are the key players and what are their interests? Information gathering. What do I know? What do I need to know? And what can't I know yet? Phase 2, the strategic response, Mondays 2:7. Timing analysis. Which decisions are urgent versus important? Principle check. What are my non-negotiable values in this situation? Tactical options. Given current constraints, what are different ways to honor my principles? Communication strategy. How do I manage information flow and narrative? Phase 3, the long-term navigation, weeks to months. Adaptation monitoring. How are circumstances changing and how must I adapt? Relationship management. How do I maintain crucial alliances while staying true to principles? Exit strategy planning. What are my options if the situation becomes untenable? Learning integration. What is this crisis teaching me for future challenges? Modern applications and case studies. Case study 1. The corporate whistleblower dilemma. Sarah was a senior executive who discovered her company was covering up a safety issue that could harm customers. Like Seneca with Nero, she faced an impossible choice: speak out, lose her career, or stay silent and compromise her integrity. Seneca's framework applied. Control audit. She couldn't control the company's past decisions or guarantee the outcome of whistleblowing, but she could control her actions and how she approached the situation. Strategic timing. She realized immediate public disclosure might cause more harm than good, but waiting too long could make her complicit. She chose a middle path, documenting everything while building a coalition of allies within the company. Principled flexibility. Her principle was protecting customer safety. Her flexible tactics included trying internal channels, regulatory agencies, and public disclosure, each escalation carefully timed and executed. Result: the safety issue was addressed. The company implemented better oversight, and Sarah maintained her position while becoming a respected voice for corporate responsibility. Case study 2. The political campaign crisis. Mark was managing a political campaign when his candidate was caught in a scandal 3 weeks before the election. Like Seneca managing Nero's crises, he had to balance loyalty, pragmatism, and principles. Seneca's framework applied. Control audit. He couldn't change what had happened or control media coverage, but he could influence the campaign's response and his candidate's actions in the future. Strategic timing. Some responses needed immediate damage control, while others required patience, policy pivots, long-term reputation repair. Principled flexibility. His principle was serving the public good through honest governance. His tactics adapted from damage control to strategic repositioning to authentic accountability. Result: while they lost the election, the candidate's honest handling of the crisis preserved their political future and public trust. Your crisis navigation challenge. Here's how to prepare for your next crisis using Seneca's framework. Week 1, Crisis Preparation. Identify your non-negotiable principles in different life areas: career, relationships, health, finances. Practice the control audit on current challenges. Develop your personal early warning system for potential crises. Week 2, Decision-making practice. Apply the timing matrix to current decisions. Practice principled flexibility in low-stakes situations. Build relationships and resources you might need in a crisis. Week 3, Stress testing. Mentally rehearse potential crises in each life area. Develop contingency plans that honor your principles. Practice emotional regulation techniques for high-pressure situations. Week 4, Integration. Create your personal crisis management checklist. Identify mentors or advisors for different types of crises. Commit to regular review and updating of your crisis preparedness. Remember Seneca's ultimate insight: crises don't create character, they reveal it. The person who has prepared philosophically and practically for difficulty will not just survive a crisis. They will emerge stronger, wiser, and more capable of serving others. Seneca's framework isn't just about crisis management, but crisis transformation. It's about turning the worst moments of your life into the foundation for your most significant contributions. Every crisis contains the seeds of growth, wisdom, and service to others. The question isn't whether you'll face crises, you will. The question is whether you'll use Seneca's framework to transform those crises into your most significant opportunities for growth and impact. If this video helped you navigate crises with wisdom and integrity, hit that like button and subscribe for more ancient wisdom that works in the modern world. Next week, we're exploring Carl Jung's insights on the midlife crisis. Why these psychological breakdowns are necessary for becoming who you're meant to be. Comment below and tell me, what's one crisis you currently face where you could apply Seneca's framework? I read every comment and often feature the most insightful responses in future videos. Remember, every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Your current crisis isn't your destruction. Your transformation is waiting to happen. Are you ready to use Seneca's wisdom to navigate it?